The coffee at St. Agatha's Hospital was the kind that tasted like it had been sitting since the previous government. Fletcher Dowd had learned that in the first week after his daughter's diagnosis, when he'd started spending Tuesday afternoons in the oncology waiting room on the 4th floor, watching the ceiling tiles and pretending the styrofoam cup in his hands was doing something useful. He was 53 years old. He wore the same canvas jacket he'd owned since 2009, the one with the frayed cuff on the left side that he kept meaning to replace. He drove a 2004 Ford F-150 with a cracked dashboard and a heater that only worked if you hit the panel above the glove box at a specific angle. He was not the kind of man people looked at twice. That Tuesday, the waiting room was fuller than usual. 3 rows of blue plastic chairs, most of them taken. A woman across from him was knitting something green. A teenage boy had his earbuds in and his knee going like a piston. Fletcher had his coffee and his silence, and the folder on his lap that contained Mara's latest blood work results, which he had read so many times he could recite the numbers in his sleep. He wasn't reading them now. He was watching the door. The door opened and a woman came through it in a wheelchair. She was maybe 45, with dark hair pulled back from a face that had the particular stillness of someone who had learned to keep their expressions controlled in public. She was dressed simply, gray trousers, a blue blouse, the kind of clothes that didn't announce anything. The man pushing her wheelchair was in a suit that cost more than Fletcher's truck, and he was talking at her in a low, clipped voice that carried the precise register of someone who was used to being obeyed. Fletcher wasn't trying to listen. The room was small and the man's voice had that quality. "Already told Henschel you'd agree to the restructuring," the man was saying. "There's no point in drawing this out. The board meets in 6 days. The woman said something Fletcher couldn't hear. Audrey. The man said the name the way you'd say a wrong answer. "This isn't the time for sentiment. What you're doing here every week is a gesture. It's not strategy." She said something again. Still quiet. "Your father would have made the call by now," the man said. There was a pause. Fletcher looked back down at his folder. He turned a page that didn't need turning. "My father," the woman said, clearly enough this time, "is dead, Noel." The man, Noel, smoothed his lapel. "Then you should be even more motivated to protect what he built." He left her there, walked back through the door and let it close behind him. Fletcher watched him go. The room had gone quiet in the way rooms go quiet when something has happened that everyone is pretending not to have noticed. The woman, Audrey, sat with her hands folded in her lap and looked at the middle distance. Fletcher looked at his coffee. Then he stood up, walked to the vending machine in the corner, fed it $2 and came back with a hot chocolate. He held it out toward her. She looked at it, then at him. "You look like you need something that isn't hospital coffee," he said. "This is worse objectively, but it's warm." She studied him for a moment with the expression of someone recalibrating. Then she took it. "Thank you," she said. He sat back down. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't ask any questions. He opened his folder again and looked at the numbers that he already knew. After a while, she said, "What's on the 4th floor?" "Pediatric oncology," he said. "My daughter, I'm sorry. She's doing all right, relatively." He paused. "Week 6 of treatment. They say week 6 is when you start to know something. How old is she?" 11. He said it flat, the way you say numbers that are too large to be numbers anymore. The woman was quiet. Then she said, "My nephew, he's 9, same floor." Fletcher looked up from his folder. "His parents are in Vancouver," she said. "I'm the closest family." So, he understood that word. The whole weight of a situation collapsed into 2 letters. "Fletcher Dowd," he said. "Audrey Calder," she said. They shook hands, which was slightly awkward given the geography of the waiting room, but they managed. He didn't think about Audrey Calder much in the days after. He thought about Mara, which was a full-time occupation. He thought about the insurance company's latest letter, which had arrived on Thursday, and which he'd read standing over the kitchen sink, because he hadn't wanted to sit down for it. He thought about the second mortgage, which he'd taken in March. He thought about his ex-wife, Lindsay, who was doing what she could from Calgary, but whose what she could had limits that they'd both stopped pretending weren't there. He was a structural engineer, had been for 26 years. He worked for a small firm in Hamilton, Dowd and Associates, though the associates had come and gone, and now it was mostly Fletcher and 2 junior engineers named Preet and Caroline, who were good at their jobs and patient with his silences. The firm did mostly infrastructure assessments: bridges, retaining walls, drainage systems, work that nobody celebrated and everybody needed. It was not the kind of work that made you rich. It was the kind of work that made you thorough. He went back to St. Agatha's the following Tuesday. Mara had labs and then a treatment session and then a check-in with Dr. Nkemderim, who had the gift of explaining terrible things in ways that were somehow bearable. Fletcher waited on the 4th floor. He had a new styrofoam cup. He had his folder. Audrey Calder was already there. She had a tablet on her lap and was reading something on it with the focused attentions of someone who treats time as a resource with limited supply. She looked up when he came in. "Mr. Dowd," she said. "Just Fletcher," he said. He sat down in the same chair as before. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, without looking up from the tablet, "I looked you up." He waited. "Dowd and Associates," she said. "The Lakeshore Bridge Assessment in 2019. The Millhaven Retention Report. The work you did on the Elgin Street drainage overhaul. That was mostly Preet," he said. "Your name's on the reports. That's how firms work." She looked up from the tablet then. "You know who I am." It wasn't a question, but he answered it anyway. "Calder Medical. Your father started it in 1987. You've run it for the last 11 years. The board wants to restructure, which I understand to mean they want to acquire Meridian Health and pay for it by cutting the community clinic program." He paused. "I read the business sections sometimes. It was a slow month." She looked at him with the same recalibrating expression as before, only more considered. "And," she said. "And nothing," he said. "It's your company. Most people have opinions, I'm sure they do." Mara's nurse came to the door before she could say anything else. Fletcher closed his folder and stood up. "Tell your daughter I said good luck with week 6, Audrey said. He nodded. "Tell your nephew the pudding cups on this floor are better than the ones on 3. That's reliable intelligence." She almost smiled. Week 6 was, in fact, when you started to know something. Dr. Nkemderim sat across from Fletcher in his office on a Thursday afternoon and laid out the results with the careful honesty that Fletcher had come to respect and dread in equal measure. The treatment was working. Not fast, not without cost. But the markers had shifted in the right direction, and the protocol they were on, a newer combination that Nkemderim's team had been using for 14 months, was doing what it was supposed to do. There was a medication in that protocol. It wasn't covered by Fletcher's insurance plan. It hadn't been covered by any provincial formulary as of the previous year. He was paying for it out of pocket, at a cost that he had stopped calculating on a weekly basis because the weekly calculation was making it difficult to sleep. He walked out of the hospital that afternoon and stood in the parking lot and looked at his truck. The dashboard had a new crack from the cold. He hit the panel above the glove box and the heater came on. He drove home. Mara was at Lindsay's sister's place for the week, a mercy arrangement that everyone had agreed on without saying it was a mercy arrangement. The house was quiet. He made pasta. He sat at the kitchen table and looked at the insurance letter and the mortgage statement and a folder from Mara's school that someone had forwarded him and which he hadn't opened. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. He answered. "Mr. Dowd." It was Audrey Calder. Her voice on the phone was the same as in person, controlled, precise, with an undercurrent of something that was working to stay submerged. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. How did you get my number?" "I told you I looked you up." He sat back. "All right. My nephew's team told us something today," she said. "About his protocol. There's a medication they want to add. It's not on the provincial list." "I know the one," he said, a pause. "It wasn't a question either." "Yes," he said. She was quiet for longer than he expected. Then she said, "I'd like to meet with you, not here, not the hospital, somewhere neutral. Would you be willing?" He looked at the insurance letter. He looked at the mortgage statement. He thought about what neutral meant to a woman whose company had revenues that cleared 9 figures annually. "Sure," he said. "There's a diner on Barton Street I know. Tuesday, around noon." The diner was called Patrice's and it had been on Barton Street for 30 years. And the owner was a woman named June who had never updated the laminate menus and saw no reason to start. Fletcher had been coming here since before Mara was born. The coffee was not good. The eggs were excellent. The booths had the particular quality of having absorbed 30 years of difficult conversations and emerging untroubled. Audrey Calder arrived in a van adapted for her chair, driven by someone who parked, and then stayed in the vehicle without being asked. Fletcher watched her navigate the entrance, which had a small lip that she handled without any particular drama. He stood up when she came in. She shook her head slightly, the way people do when they want you to stop treating them like an event. He sat back down. June came over without being summoned. "The usual?" she said to Fletcher. "Please, and whatever she wants." Audrey looked at the menu for approximately 3 seconds. "Coffee in there, over easy." June wrote nothing down and went away. "I don't usually meet clients in diners," Audrey said. "I'm not a client," he said. "No," she said, "you're not." She looked around the room briefly, the way you do when you're taking stock. "I like it. My assistant would hate it. Is that the man from the hospital, Noel?" Her expression settled into something flatter. "My brother-in-law. He manages the board relations. He has opinions about where I should and shouldn't be." "Does he manage a lot of things?" "He's working on it," she said. The coffee came. She wrapped both hands around the mug the way Fletcher had seen her wrap both hands around the hot chocolate in the hospital, and he thought that was probably something she didn't know she did. "The medication," he said. It was easier to go straight to it. She nodded. "The Meridian acquisition would give us leverage to negotiate formulary additions. But it takes 2 years minimum, probably 3. My nephew's team says the window for this treatment is now. The current protocol, Mara's too," he said. "I know." She looked at him directly. "Which is why I want to propose something, and I'd like you to hear all of it before you respond." He nodded. "Calder Medical runs a compassionate access program. It's not widely advertised. We cover medication costs for patients in active treatment when there's a formulary gap and documented medical necessity. The criteria are clear and the process is blind. My office doesn't see patient names." She stopped. "What I'm telling you is that your daughter likely qualifies. I'm not telling you this as a favor. I'm telling you because you should know it exists." Fletcher looked at his coffee. He was quiet for a moment. "And?" he said. It was her word and she caught it. "And I'm also here because I'd like to hire your firm," she said. "Calder Medical is planning a satellite facility in the east end of Hamilton. We need a structural assessment on 2 candidate sites. It's 6 weeks of work, give or take. I'd pay standard professional rates, not inflated. The sites are legitimate and the project is real." He looked at her. "I'm not offering charity," she said. "I'm offering a contract that I would offer to any qualified firm. Your work is qualified, and the Compassionate Access Program," he said, "is separate. As I said, my office won't see the names." He looked at her for a long moment. June arrived with the eggs, the silence held while plates were set down and refills offered and declined. After June left, he said, "Why come to me directly for the contract? You could have had your team contact my firm through normal channels." "Because," she said, "I wanted to sit across from you and make sure you understood the distinction between the 2 things. Because I suspected you might refuse both if they arrived together through some assistant's email, and I needed you to understand that one of them isn't mine to give you. It belongs to the program." He picked up his fork. "I'll apply to the program," he said, "and I'll have Preet send you the firm's credentials and insurance on Monday. If your team wants to move forward after that, we'll set up a site walkthrough." She picked up her own fork. "That's acceptable." They ate. June refilled Fletcher's coffee without being asked, and brought Audrey a second coffee without being asked either, which was June's version of approval. "The man at the hospital," Fletcher said, when they were most of the way through the eggs. "Your brother-in-law, what does he get from the restructuring?" She was quiet for a moment. "Board position, real authority, not advisory, and he's been building a relationship with Meridian's executive team for about 18 months. I found that out last week." "Did you tell the board?" "I told my legal team," she said. "We're in the middle of something careful." "But you came here anyway." She looked at him. "I came here because I'm tired of being managed," she said. It was the first thing she'd said with real heat in it, and she seemed faintly surprised by her own voice. He nodded. He didn't say anything. He thought that was probably what she needed. Not a response, but the space after one. The Compassionate Access application took 11 days. Fletcher submitted it through the portal with Mara's documentation and Dr. Nkemderim's supporting letter, and did not call anyone or send any emails or do anything except wait, because the process was supposed to be blind, and he intended to let it be blind. On the 12th day, a letter arrived from Calder Medical's program office. It was approved. He sat at the kitchen table and read it 3 times. Then he called Mara, who was still at her aunt's place, and they talked for 45 minutes about things that were not the letter. The site assessments started the following week. Preet led most of the field work. Fletcher reviewed the reports and did the second candidate site himself, because it had a drainage complication that wanted attention. The Calder medical project manager was a woman named Yemi, who was efficient and direct, and did not try to make conversation for its own sake, which Fletcher appreciated. He didn't see Audrey. He didn't expect to. He went to the hospital on Tuesday. The waiting room was its same self. The knitting woman had graduated to something in orange. The teenager with the earbuds was gone, replaced by an older couple who held hands the way people do when they've stopped needing to think about it. Audrey was there. She was reading from the tablet again. "Your firm is fast," she said when he sat down. "Preet is fast," he said. "I reviewed it. The drainage note on Site B was detailed. The drainage note needed to be detailed. There's a 12% grade running east that whoever built on that lot didn't account for. It would have caused you problems in year 3. She nodded. She didn't say thank you, which he appreciated. It would have been the wrong kind of thing to say. "The board met on Friday," she said after a while, "and Noel called for a vote on my capacity to lead the company. He's framing it as a fiduciary concern." Her voice was steady, professionally steady. "He had 4 board members with him. He needs 6. How many are there?" 12. She paused. "He's been having dinners. I know about 8 of them. And the other 4 board members. 2 are waiting to see which way the wind goes. 2 are mine." Fletcher thought about this. What does he have? An argument that the satellite clinic program, this one, Hamilton and 3 others, represents capital exposure with no viable return timeline. In a restructuring scenario, they'd be defunded. The compassionate access program too? She was quiet for a moment. Yes. He looked at the folder on his lap, which he hadn't opened. "There's a public consultation process," she said, "for the Hamilton satellite facility. The city requires it because we're applying for a zoning variance. The meeting is in 3 weeks." She looked at him. "If local residents or professionals with established ties to the project speak at that consultation, it carries weight with the city, which creates a formal record, which becomes relevant to the board's liability calculation if they vote to defund a project that has active community support on record." He understood what she was saying. "You need people at the consultation," he said. "I need the consultation to look like what it actually is," she said. "A facility that serves people who need it. I can't organize that myself without it appearing orchestrated. But you know the East End. You know who works there. You've done assessments on half those streets." He thought of Preet, who lived 4 blocks from Site B and had worked the Elgin Street project and knew every contractor in a 6-kilometer radius. He thought of Dr. Nkemderim, who had been writing referrals to community clinics for 20 years and had opinions about access that he expressed with the measured passion of someone who had run out of patience for the gap between policy and reality. "I'm not going to recruit people," he said, "but I can tell people it's happening. That's all I'm asking." The public consultation was held on a Wednesday night in a community center on Cannon Street that smelled of floor wax and old gymnasium. The chairs were stackable, and the sound system was marginal, and the city planning facilitator was a young man with a binder who was doing his conscientious best. Fletcher arrived 20 minutes early. Yemi was there already, setting up a display. 6 other people came in the next 10 minutes. A pharmacist from the Barton Street area, a school social worker, 2 parents whose children received services through the existing Calder clinic on the mountain, a retired nurse who lived near Site A, and Preet, who had brought Caroline. Dr. Kenkamandirim arrived at 5 to 7 and sat in the second row with his coat still on. The facilitator opened the meeting. He explained the variance application. He explained the comment process. He asked if anyone wished to speak. 8 people went to the microphone. They talked about wait times and transit access, and what it had meant to have a clinic within reach when the mountain hospitals were backed up. The pharmacist talked about medication coordination. The social worker talked about the kids she referred who didn't have parents who could drive them 45 minutes to an appointment. Dr. Nkemderim talked for 4 minutes with the careful precision of a man who has testified before regulatory bodies and knows how to put a fact in a place where it stays. Fletcher did not speak. He sat in the back row with his jacket on and his arms folded and listened, and thought about the 12% grade on Site B, and Mara's blood work, and the particular quality of silence that followed a statement that can't be walked back. At the end of the meeting, the facilitator thanked everyone and said the record would be submitted to the city within 10 days. In the parking lot afterward, Audrey was in her van. The window was down. She had been listening through the audio patch that Yemi had set up for her. Fletcher stopped next to the van. "Nkemdirim was good," he said. "He was," she said. "So was the pharmacist. I didn't know about him. His name's Alan. He's been on Barton for 12 years. She nodded. She looked at him for a moment with the expression he had come to associate with her, the one where she was deciding how much to say. "Noel is going to call the vote the week after the city submits the record," she said. "Do you have 6? "I think I have 6. She paused. "I didn't 2 weeks ago." He didn't ask how that had changed. That was her business. "The site assessment is complete," he said. "You should have the final report by Friday." "I know." She looked away, then back. "Fletcher, I want to say something." He waited. "When you came to the hospital with that hot chocolate," she said, "I had been sitting in that room for 40 minutes while Noel told me what my father would have done. And nobody in that building had looked at me like I was a person in a while." She stopped. "I'm not saying that to make it sentimental. I'm saying it because I think you should know that it mattered." He looked at the parking lot. "It was a vending machine hot chocolate," he said. "I'm not going to take too much credit." "Take some," she said. He almost smiled. He was not, by nature, a man who almost smiled easily. "How's your nephew?" he said. "Better this week, she said. Dr. Nkemdirim's team is seeing good markers." "Good," he said. He said good night. He drove home. He hit the panel above the glove box and the heater came on. The board vote happened on a Thursday afternoon. Fletcher was at a bridge inspection in Stony Creek when his phone buzzed. He was 40 feet up on a walkway over a concrete channel, and he did not look at his phone because 40 feet up on a walkway is not where you look at your phone. He came down at noon. He looked at his phone. There was a message from an unknown number, which was Audrey Calder's, because she had only ever called from that number. It said, 7 to 5. The satellite facilities remain. Compassionate access program remains. Thank you for telling people it was happening. He read it twice. He put his phone in his pocket. Preet was eating lunch on the hood of the company truck. "Good news," she said. "A project we worked on is moving forward," he said. "The Calder site." "Yeah." Preet nodded. She offered him half her sandwich without making it a gesture. He took it. They ate lunch on the hood of the truck in the October cold, looking at the bridge, which was structurally sound and would hold for another 20 years if the drainage was managed, and which nobody would think about until it needed them. That was, Fletcher thought, not the worst thing you could say about a piece of work. Mara came home in November. Not done, the protocol would run until spring, but home, which was its own kind of shift. She was thin and tired in ways that were accurate to what she'd been through, and she was also 11 years old, which meant that by the second day back she had opinions about the state of the refrigerator, and had rearranged the living room bookshelf by some system that Fletcher could not decode. He let her. He sat in the kitchen and drank the coffee that was better than hospital coffee, but only comparatively, and listened to her move things around and thought about the insurance letter that was no longer the most urgent thing on the table. The Compassionate Access Program would cover the medication through the end of the protocol. After that, the Provincial Formulary Review, which Calder Medical's legal team had submitted a formal evidence package to, citing the Hamilton Satellite Facility's case data and Dr. Nkemdirim's testimony, was expected to conclude in the spring. He did not know what it would conclude. Nobody did. But the data would be in a room where it hadn't been before. That was not nothing. He called Audrey once in December to let her know that Site B's drainage revision had been built into the final site plan and would be incorporated during the foundation phase. It was a professional call. She thanked him. He asked about her nephew. Responding well, she said, they moved him to a maintenance protocol last week. Good, he said. How's Mara? She rearranged my bookshelf. A pause. That sounds like good news. I'm choosing to take it that way, he said. She said, Fletcher, one more thing. He waited. The Hamilton Satellite Facility is scheduled to open in 18 months, she said. We're planning a community event when it does. Nothing formal. Just the neighborhood, the staff, the people who made it possible. She paused. I'd like Mara to come, if she's well enough. I think she'd like to see what her Tuesday afternoons were part of, without anyone telling her they were part of anything. He sat with that for a moment. The bookshelf was visible from where he was sitting. He still couldn't figure the system. "I'll ask her," he said. "That's all I'm asking," she said. Outside, the first real snow of the year had come down overnight and was sitting on the street in the particular silence that snow makes in a city. The hush that arrives before anything has been shoveled or driven over, when everything is briefly, temporarily, the same clean surface as everything else. Fletcher looked at it through the kitchen window. He thought about bridges. He thought about what holds and what gives, and the difference, which is never as dramatic as people imagine. It is almost always in the small things, the 12% grades and the drainage notes, and the decisions made in rooms before the problem becomes visible. He got up and refilled his coffee and went to the living room to see what Mara had done with the books.